The person who really inspired me is my dad. And to be honest, both my parents have been an incredible steering support in terms of helping me to understand my religion. I was incredibly lucky because I was born into a very spiritual household, and I could see the devotion of my parents and their love of spirituality. And when I used to question them about things, they never shut me down. They in fact encouraged me to think deeply about our religion and spirituality. And rather than feeling distant from it, these questions made me feel closer to my religious inheritance, my spiritual inheritance. And my dad is very much involved in the teaching of Hinduism, especially to children and young people. And he ran so many classes up and down the country, teaching children and young people about what the Hindu religion involves. And I was lucky enough to go along to his classes. And when we were small, those classes involved lots of colourful stories and narratives from the Hindu tradition. And as we grew up, as the years went past, we progressed from the stories onto deeper philosophical ideas, ethical and moral issues and challenges, and ways that we as human beings can navigate the world with the guidance of our spiritual teachings. So I am so indebted to my parents and my dad especially for guiding me on that journey. The core values of the Hindu tradition for me are firstly something that we call religious pluralism. And that is to recognize that every individual has their own perspective, their own spiritual approach. And we live in a very globalized world, and we are living right next to people of different faiths, different religious traditions. And rather than feeling compromised, it's actually an opportunity to feel enriched about this whole enterprise of spirituality. Because if spirituality is so vast and so infinite, then surely there must be an infinite number of ways that all of us can think about and approach the divine. And the beautiful thing about this teaching of religious pluralism is that it recognizes that every individual and every path that every individual takes is equally beautiful, and we must respect and cherish the traditions of everyone around us. And the other core belief of the Hindu tradition is this idea of spiritual humanism. And what that tells us is that there is something deeply special about every living thing on this planet. And to recognize that we are so much more than just lumps of carbon, lumps of matter. There is so much more to us. And I think it's something that all of us are inherently aware of, because we all like to think that there is something special about every one of us, and we're not just matter. And the beautiful idea, the beautiful implication of this idea is that when we go out into the world, and if we remind ourselves of the essential divine nature of everyone that we interact with, it really elevates our life, because we see that we are interacting with the divine, we are interacting with different manifestations of the divine. And the beautiful thing about the Hindu tradition is that it tells us that, yes, it is wonderful to bow down and pray to an image of God that you love. But in fact, the highest form of worship is to come out of the temple and look at the human beings around us, look at those people who are around us. And the highest form of worship is, in fact, service to humanity, service to the whole living kingdom, because there is something special about each and every one of us. These two core principles of the Hindu tradition for me have really, in a way, reminded me that this is very much part of my spiritual inheritance. And I feel incredibly lucky that I've grown up with these two beautiful values, because it has shaped the way in which I see the world. Because everyone around me is special, everyone around me is divine, and everyone is making progress on their own spiritual trajectories at their own pace. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of that journey, this journey of humanity towards trying to connect to the divine. And once we see all of these people around us acting and interacting with each other, it reminds us that life is not just boring, life is not just mundane. When we truly take into account this spiritual dimension of the human condition, it really uplifts and elevates the way in which we live, and it's a truly enriching experience. I think the beautiful thing about the Hindu tradition is that these teachings are truly empowering because the focal point of the Hindu tradition is to recognize who we actually are. We are not just the body, we are not even the mind, all those thoughts that are racing through our head all day. That is not who we are either. The Hindu tradition very much points in the direction of saying that your essential nature is divine. And when we try and apply that in our everyday life, when we try and remind ourselves of who we actually are, that we are divine, and that we are infinite by nature, it reminds us that even though life can be filled with so many challenges and obstacles, and life is always a bumpy road, but if we keep reminding ourselves of our essential nature as divine, we carry an infinite amount of strength and power within us. It reminds us that all of the challenges and obstacles that life presents are finite and limited, but your essential nature is infinite. And the infinite is far more powerful than the finite. And it gives us the strength to overcome any challenge or any obstacle that life throws at us. The beautiful thing about the Hindu tradition is that it never goes out and says you must become a Hindu if you believe in these ideas, because these ideas, Hindus believe, are truly universal and they apply to each and every one of us. So rather than necessarily worrying about what label it comes under, the Hindu tradition very strongly tells us if you like these ideas and they make sense to you, you don't need to transfer your religion. You can stay where you are, but just adopt those beautiful ideas and make them your own, make them part of your journey and your spiritual progress. We don't need to worry so much about the labels. And the beautiful way in which we say this is that these ideas are so empowering. It really reminds us that, for example, if you ask a man on the street, do you believe in God? He might say, no, I don't believe in God. And there are so many people out there in the public who just don't believe in God at all. And they just find the idea too far fetched. But if you ask that same person, do you believe in yourself? He'll say, yes, of course I believe in myself. What kind of a silly question is that? And that's where the Hindu tradition says, that's exactly what we're talking about. You believe in yourself, which means that inadvertently you do believe in the divine because the divine is your essential nature. And there are so many beautiful places that you can go to discover these teachings of Hinduism for yourself. And the source of inspiration for my dad and for me is somebody called Swami Vivekananda. He came to England and the United States about 150 years ago, and he presented these ancient teachings of the Hindu religion in a modern language, in English, which makes it so much more applicable for all of us. So, if there is one place to turn to, I would very much recommend the teachings of Swami Vivekananda.